Hey, everybody. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Mark, and welcome to Youth Talks, the Zoom edition. Hey, I got something fresh off the press, though. It is day 10 of the stay-at-home order and day 17 of freedom from school, sort of. So that leads me to my opening question, Tyler. What are we doing with our time to occupy and entertain ourselves these days?
You know, my first reaction is that all? I mean, it kind of seems like this has been going on for months, and here we are, only 10 days of the actual shutdown of things, at least for us, I guess. For all you guys in school and stuff, it's been longer than that, but
yes.
So
well, it's back to that school question again. It's all of the schoolwork and none of the fun. So
that's right.
Thank you, coronavirus, for that special treat for all of us. So
you don't get to see your friends or teachers or hang out. Sorry, just the work part. Oh well.
Yeah. Welcome to middle and elder age, where you don't really want to see anybody anymore. So
that's it.
You got to enjoy that stuff.
But to answer your question, I've basically just been watching Netflix, Disney Plus, and looking at my social media. That's all I do, 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
That's-
books. What are those? I had that thought the other day. It's like I have not cracked a book, and I felt, quite honestly, this morning I was a little convicted. Today I am trying to not watch anything on my phone. No more movies or any episodes on my phone. I am literally going to read a book today. Fanfare. Unbelievable. So
That's awesome.
let's see.
Yeah.
Well, I said it now. You can ask me tomorrow if it actually happens. So I don't know.
We do know that we'll have some of the students holding you accountable to that. They're good at that. So
Oh, yeah,
So
they did.
I've got
I
about
saw that
four books.
Oh, well, that's right. So we can put that out there, the poll. What that can be our new Mario, if you can get that on the poll lines. What book should Mark be reading during quarantine? What's the number one book I should be reading?
Not including the Bible, because that's an obvious one. Yeah.
Oh, we're supposed to be reading the Bible? Joke, right? Well, I hope it's a joke. Well, maybe it isn't. No, I have read I have looked at it. I mean, it's there's not fully dusted on the cover or anything.
Yeah.
So
okay. So
yeah.
So I've looked at mine sitting on the stand or whatever next to my bed, but no.
I do use it on the phone though, so you can actually be on your phone and scrolling through your Bible app, and so that actually has been helpful. I do use that a fair amount. I do have a really cool paraphrased version of the Bible, the epistles, all the letters from the New Testament. That's really from like 1960, which was probably super radical at the time, but it's a great version to read through, and so I do enjoy that a lot. In the morning, some of the letters. And in fact, we should probably use some of that at some point with the students because there are times, even in letters, you think it'd be simple to understand some of Paul's letters or whatever is in there. And sometimes you can read through it and go, I don't know what point he's making. But this version has been nice for that. So maybe we'll share it.
Yeah. Yeah, those paraphrase versions are often good, whether it's the Message or whatever. Just kind of gives you a little bit different perspective. And actually, I enjoy reading different translations too, because you get a little bit different nuance or something from each one. So it's good.
That's right.
In the Bible, all that to say, the Bible is a good book to read. So we encourage you to do it.
A great book to read.
I know. So
but of course, it should only be read in the King James version because that's the actual version that Jesus spoke in was the King James. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
But I have met many people.
Jesus was about 1,700 years ahead of his time, knowing English. Yeah.
Right. There you go. Charity.
So I did get a response back on the poll. People are saying Mark should read Sherlock Holmes and any book about Sherlock Holmes. No, Colton Jones. Yeah, and that was from J.S. Gentili. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jackson.
Stuff.
Okay. Joining us.
Colton Jones said Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's see. Jordan said.
Watch those when there's a movie of them.
Well, yeah.
Watch the movie. Yeah.
But everybody can argue. Everybody can argue that the books sometimes are better than the movies, but you never know.
Oh yeah, typically. Yeah. What was the last one you said?
There was one from Jordan Roth. He said, see how many books of the Left Behind series he can get through by the end of quarantine.
Right. Before Jesus returns.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, those were the responses.
Cool.
Oh, well, good. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, Mario, for that. And I will keep that in mind, and it will keep me up tonight when I haven't started any of them yet, and I'm feeling guilty at 2 a.m. I will think of that, and I will think of all of you who thought of me that way and put that. Well, it's not a guilt trip, so I definitely appreciate it very much. So, but I was thinking, because Netflix has. What's that, Tyler?
If it makes you feel any better, I've got about 4 books that I've been reading for several months now. One of them I've been reading for over a year, and I still haven't finished. So.
Okay.
Yes. So
what's the number one in hindrance to your reading of the printed material?
Oh, that's a good question. The number one hindrance is probably watching Netflix and TV and stuff instead of reading, because that would be the time that I would have to read otherwise, So yeah. So that's a choice I've made repeatedly over and over.
It's all right. I forgive you. So.
Oh, thank you.
It's a new day. We can start over. But absolutely, I think that if we had another question, that'd be what keeps you from doing that. But we were. I was just wondering, if Netflix, have their top 10 list. I wonder if that was the the best current gauge of the moral state of America. What are people watching the most? So
if it is, we're not doing so hot because.
Have you watched anything off the top 10?
So, let me see. I wrote them down here just because I figured we'd be talking about them, and I have seen 1, 2. Actually, only 2 of the top 10. So
okay, we won't ask you which ones. What's the current top 10 on Netflix these days?
Do we want to go 1 to 10 or 10 to 1 and build it up?
All right, top 10. Netflix number 1. Starting number 10.
Starting number 10
on Netflix
is Car Masters. Car Masters. Show about.
Actually, I love that show.
Cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is actually TV PG. So
that's good.
Bleep out any curse words. So.
They still say them. They're just bleeped out. Right?
They still say them, and my heavens, no, I don't know what they were saying, but they bleeped it out. I don't know what it might have been. But okay, so Car Masters top 10, nice. Yeah. Number 9.
Number 9 is the platform. The platform. Oh, yeah. I think I've only seen a little preview for it, and it's like this big jail system that has many floors to it, and there's a hole down the middle of all of them, and you can fall down into the lower levels or try to work your way up somehow. Well, I don't really know.
Yeah. That one's a little dark. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a little dark. I've heard. I wouldn't put that on your top 10 list, young people. All right.
I'm pretty sure
it's a foreign language though. It's dubbed. Okay. So gotcha. If they happen to curse, it's in another language, so it doesn't count.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. My question is, how do you know, Mark?
How do I know?
How do you?
That's a good question. That's a good question. But not all questions have to be answered.
Yeah.
We'll put that on a poll. All right. So number 8, moving on from the platform.
Unorthodox show about a girl that leaves a Jewish community. That's all I know.
Orthodox, unorthodox, orthodox, unorthodox. Okay.
Yep.
That's too bad. I feel bad. Okay.
Number 7 is The Roommate. I think that's a psychological thriller, perhaps a horror film. I'm not sure exactly.
The Roommate. Yeah. Well, if you've ever been anywhere, in college, anywhere else, living somewhere, you've probably had a roommate or two that you probably might have liked to left underneath the sheets, underneath in the closet.
Siblings count.
Siblings count for roommates? All right.
Yeah.
That'd be another question to ask. What's the worst roommate you've ever had? So I don't know what kind of answer we'd get for that. Okay, so we move past the roommate to number 6.
Number 6 is Bloodfather, the film.
The Mel Gibson.
Yeah. And actually,
I just saw that the other way. A lot of curse words, of course. A little bit of blood and gore. But Mel Gibson, he really pulled it off, being a biker dude with his he's gotten buff, but he's really burly, big old beard and everything. I was pretty impressed, but. The ending could have been better, but it was a decent movie.
Really?
The ending could have.
I actually just watched it the other day too, and I thought the ending was really good because, definitely, a lot of swear words and drugs and stuff in there.
Guy getting smashed by a semi. That was the most epic point of
really
it all.
Lighthearted.
I even went through it in slow-mo just to see how they cinematically put that together. But I could not see the dummy at one point. It looked like a real person getting smashed. So I don't know what happened.
Nice. All right. Well, that will keep you up at night as well. So that's probably not on Disney Plus. I'm gonna.
Yeah. No, not at Disney Plus. Not at all.
All right, Mel Gibson. He knows how to bring it. There's no doubt about it. He can play crazy. He can play tough. He can play rough. He. And actually, as an interesting note, when he made The Passion of the Christ in 2004, the unexpected hit of the Easter story of Jesus, he actually was in an untitled role. He was one of the guards off camera that actually had the hammer and nails that put Jesus on the cross. So he included himself in that scene. You don't see his face, but it's actually his hands and arms that are part of that. So he wanted to be part of that. So interesting note of trivia to that film.
That's interesting.
Okay.
I never knew
that. Number five is a documentary, How to Fix a Drug Scandal. Don't know anything about it, but
That one, I am truly unfamiliar with that one. I do not know anything about.
I'm not a cartel guy, so I wouldn't know either.
It is.
Well, that's good to know, Mario.
Not that much, but
I don't know if I can keep you on the payroll, Mario, if you were actually part of a drug cartel. So.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'll ask my uncle.
Okay. Number 4.
Number 4 is Nailed It. And I believe that's a baking show where they give you something you have to create just like it, and the people end up failing miserably. For the most part. So,
how are you in the kitchen, by the way, Tyler? Are you good in the kitchen there? Are you effective or utilitarian, or do you not make it?
What I'm doing? Am I eating in the kitchen? If I'm eating in the kitchen.
No, how is your cooking? I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Do you ever make an appearance in the kitchen? You know, are you particularly utilitarian, ramen, hot dogs? I mean, or are you more gourmet?
I do the grilling, the barbecuing outside on the grill, and other than that, it's pretty simple for me. I can
all American.
I can pasta and some of that kind of stuff, but
pasta. Oh wow, okay.
It's very basic. Like I can boil pastas when I mean
boil water.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're all grown up.
Yeah. Tiffany just reminded me too that I make a pretty mean waffle every Saturday morning. So. I do like breakfast.
You're a good man. You do those routine things. I do know you do that. You try to keep the relationship fires burning, and that's one way to do it. Being there every weekend with waffles. So good for you. Proud of you.
Yep.
Okay, number 3.
Number 3. Should we do a drum roll? Drum roll.
Sound effects. We'll put it in. We'll edit this later and we'll put that in.
Yes. All American. Know nothing about it.
It's about football. It's about football. Yeah. Coach football. One of the guys, he's a little cocky. He thinks he's the star of the show and everything, but the coach is kind of teaching him some teamwork, some humbling. So it's a pretty good one. But again, it's if it says it's rated at a certain thing, you guys shouldn't be watching it if you're not at that age. But it's a good overall storyline as far as making sure to work well with the team. Don't think like you're the only one, but yeah, it's pretty good.
So bottom line, Mario, you are watching TV.
I am watching TV every once in a while when I can. I'll admit I might be busy with you guys and with church and everything else. But every once in a while I do get to.
I won't give you the business. Okay, number 2. What's number 2 on the top 10?
Number 2, drum roll, please. Ozark. Another drug running show, I think. So
I watched a couple episodes. Ozark is dark.
Yeah. Hilariously dark, yes. Hilariously dark.
Hilariously dark? Is that possible?
It is possible. You got, what's his name? Jason Bateman in it.
Jason Bateman. Laura Linney.
Yep. They, it is
we don't have to give a recap of that. Ozark is...
Nope. Don't watch
He's a guy with shifty morals who's been laundering money for the mob, and he's on the run down in the Ozarks. So, pretty area.
Yeah.
People don't seem so pretty, but I bet they're actually nice people down there. I haven't really toured the Missouri Ozarks, that area there, and the lakes and things. So, okay. And number 1 is?
Number 1. The Tiger King.
That's funny. People were mentioning that earlier.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, have you guys seen the Tiger King? Let's see. Watch Tiger King. Somebody said My Little Pony, but yeah, that was the number 1 that everybody brought up.
As I started all of this with, the end of everything is obvious when Tiger King is number 1 on Netflix.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
I have not watched that. I do know people that have, and they said it is one very, very, very sad story. So
it is a crazy thing. People have been talking like crazy, and I'm like, how is it so popular when it's like, I don't know. It's just a ridiculous show. But
well, I think it's interesting enough. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was just gonna say and they say it in the show. It's like a train wreck. It's so bad you can't look away.
Right.
It's really kind of there's truth to that with this show. It's if you want a reality TV show, that would be a good guy to follow around. But
some measure of reality, definitely. Yeah, I think it's interesting at a time when when things are dark and it's a difficult time that we're in with the coronavirus. I think sometimes people do tend to look at situations that are even darker than their own sometimes. And that's an interesting trait of people, that rather than look often to the light and to be uplifted, sometimes we're left, searching for something that looks worse than where we're at, maybe to feel a little better. So that's an interesting list, nonetheless. So I think there's a lot of people that are not watching Netflix, and so maybe they are finding some hope in these times. I hope, definitely, and hopefully we can bring a little of that today, a little levity.
It's interesting to say that, because our youth are probably not watching these top 10 ones, but I know that they are watching I Still Believe, as they're commenting, and Breakthrough, which was another great one. That was a really good movie. Of course, I Still Believe about Jeremy Camp, and what else?
Yeah, I did. So I went to theater and saw that movie. That was definitely, I shed some tears on that one. That's a powerful story. It's amazing how God works. I think most of us just put a bunch of barriers and ropes and boxes around God, and we don't really look to see him work. And the interesting thing about that story is that at some level, there's a miraculous nature of God doing some of the things we might ask and long for, but in other circumstances, coming up with a plan that's different from ours. And I think that's always an interesting place to be, where we are learning to accept what God does, and not always looking for the outcome that we would want to see, and being at peace with that through him. So yeah, that's certainly an interesting place, isn't it, Tyler, to think about acceptance and trust in a plan that's not our own.
Yeah, it is difficult, and because ultimately we think, and I can say this because it's been true of myself, but we think that we know what's best for us, and we have these hopes and dreams and plans, and when things don't work out, that's it's pretty difficult, and to try to come to terms with that and figure out what to do in the midst of it, it can be a very difficult journey. But it is something that I think is a reality we all ought to get used to, to put it bluntly, because just because there's always going to be something that doesn't go to plan and doesn't go how we expect. And so
we're living in the middle of it, right? I mean, this is not what anybody expected. I think of some of our seniors that were hoping to have a normal life and graduation this year, and be able to celebrate the moments and the milestones of ending high school and all that goes with that. It's an important time. I mean, no matter whether somebody's concerned or worried or excited, there's just something to be able to go through that. So definitely feeling for those out there. A special shout out to Alyssa. She's one of our seniors, and just came to mind, and thinking of the difficulty of not necessarily being able to go through everything. So yeah, that's a challenge at this time, especially. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And we're still 17 days into it, or 10 days into it, whichever measure you're going by.
Feels like a lifetime.
Yeah, it really does.
In some ways.
So
how's home life over for you guys? I mean, you're at home regularly now. We've done a lot of restricting at the church. Obviously, we're not there now. And so what's that like, spending more time at home in this particular circumstance?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about it last week too, but I guess it's
anything changed?
Well, not a whole lot. It's kind of, in some ways it's really nice just being around family more, Tiffany and Isley. In other ways, it's a little bit harder to balance, the work things I got to do, and trying to work from home, but also be a good dad and a good husband. And so, that's kind of just where it sits with me. And I guess it's also harder because I see things that need to be done around the house, especially yard work, now that sun's out and everything. I'm like, ooh, I should.
It's still a little chilly in the morning though, so you can kind of get out of some of that.
Yeah, but it's been nice because mornings have been slower, and it's kind of nice just to sleep in a little bit and then get up and go for a jog, and just have that time to kind of wake up and read my Bible, do my devotions in the morning. And so it's been nice to have a little bit of a slower morning in that sense.
That's right. So, pretend that you're retired in your 30s.
Yeah. Yes.
With knees that could still jog, so someday that may happen where you actually be retired, but then you're like, I can't really get out and do that the way I would necessarily have liked. The one thing that is interesting for us at the church is trying to connect with people. So much what we do is person to person. You see people shaking hands, hugging, see them on Sundays, for church services, maybe Wednesday when they come in or other days of the week, and to be connected with them. And so we really haven't had that. And so we've been talking more about doing some of what we're doing like right now and trying to extend that to a different demographic group at our church that are older than the youth, and trying to expand that. And that's challenging because people have been used to doing church and relationships in one particular way. And we are really in the middle of something that might not change, immediately, and it may linger on for some time. So it's definitely sort of an evolutionary process. Excuse me. Can I say evolutionary on our channel?
No, that's not Christian. You can't say that.
No, you can use the proper use of evolution. That some things do change, and there is small variance within species groups. Like that.
It's okay. We've been bleeping you this whole time while you've been saying evolutionary. So.
Well, yes. Well,
it's a Christian swear word, so.
High on the list. Yeah. But it's definitely a lot of
things. For you, Mark?
Oh, home life for me. And here, that's my wife has been enjoying the ability to actually get to projects around the house. So she's actually been motivated every day to do different things, whether it's cleaning out particular rooms, updating things, and arranging things. And so that's been good. My son and daughter are both at home. My son has started up college again this week online. And so we're kind of wondering how that's going to go. But so far, so good. He seems to be connected to that. They both have concerns for the summer because of jobs and the possibility whether there'll be jobs available for them or whether that will open up, which gets me to thinking about, I don't know if you knew this, the highest jobless rate, I think, of claim rate we've ever had back in 1982 was maybe like 500,000 or something in a week, of all time. And this last week, it's like over 6 million people have put in unemployment claims. So
wow.
Definitely have to be concerned. I know, I'm sure in families, not only the concern about being sick, but just the possibilities that families are out of work, all the people that, all the service jobs, and it's actually extending into some manufacturing zones. So we're definitely going to have to band together in lots of unique and interesting and connected ways in the weeks and months to come as we kind of deal with some of that stuff. So, but we're overall, and I'll let you can comment on that stuff, but just family wise, it's generally good. We are doing some dinners together and have more time for that. So, it's a new world, one we had kind of evolved out of, where we weren't doing that because we are kind of doing our own lives a little bit. And so we're kind of learning how to do that again. And I suppose that's true for others. So certainly if people want to throw out some things of what they're doing at home, whether that's been good for them or whether it's been challenging to be at home more, I think one of the things we could always look for is to find a bright spot in things. It's easy to find a negative, but certainly a bright spot in it. So yeah, but overall it's good.
Yep. Good. Yeah. And we are curious to know what you guys are doing too in your spare time. And so if you want to throw that in the comments, we can get to that in a bit here.
Yeah. As long as it's staying off of the Netflix top 10. So don't put that in there.
Yeah.
Apparently only Mario gets to watch all of those. So
we'll give you all of our Christian shame and judgment if you say that. So.
No, I won't give you any for that. So. We're people of grace. We're people of grace. We all are not quite what we ought to be quite yet.
Nope.
At least I'm not there yet as of today. So maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Still holding out hope for that.
It's good humility.
Yeah. It was interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a humble approach and an accurate one. This is for all of us.
Tyler, something about humility, but that was in the first 5 minutes, so you're probably covered with that. But anyways, that's an inside joke, people. Sorry.
Yeah.
Don't take offense at that. We were talking a little bit about the virus itself, and sometimes any the sort of world situations and problems. The number of people that are potentially ill. We don't have a lot of that in our immediate area. There's some of it starts.
Again, Mark, you're freezing up on me.
Are you? I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, I see you guys. We're back to normal. Yes, we're
Mario.
We're
am I okay on my side?
Yep, we're good. Apologize to everybody online
as well. That's okay.
Can you hear me?
We'll hang in there.
Oh, I'm here. I just had my mic muted. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. No. Welcome back, everybody. By the way, for those of you guys joining us online, yes, we had a few seconds there where there was nothing going on, but we're back.
Oh, good. All right. Well, good. So you missed all that part where I was insulting Tyler, so that's probably the best of that.
It's okay. Yeah. We'll just upload it later, and we will make sure and superimpose on that. Yeah.
It was very convenient timing for me too.
It was convenient.
I missed it too. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. No, I was kind of on a serious note. We're thinking about the world situation, the effect that has on people. We don't necessarily have a lot of people in our area that are immediately suffering from the virus that we know of. I'm sure there are some. There's more, I think, in the area close to here. There's some outbreaks of it there. But worldwide, people can. We get a lot of messages in the news about how many people are ill. That's over 1 million people that are affected by it, and that seems like a lot, which it is. And then the death toll is a little bit over 50,000, which is a large number, certainly. But interestingly enough, just so we know, we don't want to get too freaked out about anything like that. So the worldwide death toll in the last 3 months or so is about 50,000. But actually, about 250,000 people die in the United States every month. So
just in the United States, not
just the United States. Yeah. So that's just the United States itself is 250,000 in 1 month, and versus 50,000 total in those 3 months. So it's not that it's insignificant, of course, but sometimes we got to balance that the specter of not being here, of dying, actually is around us a lot. And on a personal note, we had a member of our community, a person that's been part of our church through the years, unexpectedly pass away yesterday. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the family. They've continued to do that. And so sometimes that just brings it, really back to home, that stuff can seem way out there sometimes and separated from us, but some of the stuff's closer. So I know we did have a question about that. We'll probably get to it later about, something unexpected like that happening. But anyways, I just say all that because, we want to have the proper perspective, on life and death all the time. And especially when we're young, we don't ever think about it, and it seems strange and foreign and alien. And the older we get, the obvious closeness of life and its end, makes it more apparent and something that we have to deal with a little bit more. But we just want to be realistic and hopeful because of our faith in the Lord, that regardless of that, if we trust in the Lord, we do have a different kind of hope. So anyways, I know, Tyler, that's, a concern of young people a lot, and being in youth ministries at times, death comes up in a strange, just if something happens and students are concerned about it, and sometimes they have, maybe a bit stronger view of it, stronger perspective all at once. It kind of just comes in there and they don't quite know what to deal with it. Is that anything you've ever dealt with youth in terms of talking with young people and kind of helping them through any of those circumstances?
Certainly, and I think most of the situations I've run into have been, an older family member, grandma or grandpa, right, that has passed away, and just kind of talking through that. And it is, when you're young and, you got a lot of life in front of you, seemingly, it's easy just to not really think about it a whole lot. You kind of take life for granted, and, I think for me personally, all the coronavirus stuff, and then even the loss of this, this family suffered yesterday, is kind of a bit of a reality check for me to say, we don't know when our last day is going to be. We don't know when our last breath is. And, and really there's a lot, life is a vapor, it's here today, gone tomorrow, and we don't have control over that really. And so, right. To a lot of people that can be depressing, and seem hopeless, but really what I've tried to tell other people, and what I've, kind of worked through myself, is that, God has my life in his hands. He has your life in his hands. And he's not only the giver of life, but he's the sustainer of life. And, right. Just as we're going throughout our days and stuff, he's the one that is still sustaining our lives as we walk, as we talk, as we breathe, and all of that. And for me, there's a lot of comfort in that, to know that there's a God who's all powerful, all knowing, is much wiser than I am, who's holding my life in his hands, is that's a comfort, because I know my own limitations and flaws and stuff, and that's too much of a responsibility for me to want to bear, and to hold life in my own hands. And so yeah, so anyways, just doing a little reflecting on that recently, and it is kind of a sobering thought to think of, like, hey, there's life is short, and we don't know when our day is going to come, but hopefully, and what I try to counsel students that are dealing with it is like, hey, this is something that can make us think about our own lives, how we're living them, what our priorities are, and also what happens after death. Is there an afterlife, and what does that look like, and how does that all work, and that's something that Solomon writes about in Ecclesiastes. He says it's better for man for us to be at funerals and memorials than it is to be at a feast or a party, and I think his point in saying that is that it helps us think about what comes after life, because this life is short. Even if you live 80, 90, 100 years, that's still really short in comparison to the entire history and future, all the entire timeline that is eternity, and so yeah, I don't know, Mark, if you got any response to that?
Of course, yeah. When you're thinking about that, it made me think of a movie. This is a 1986 film. Robin Williams was the star of it. It was Dead Poets Society is the particular film, and that's certainly worth looking up again. So it's the movie came out in 1986, but it's set in a time like in the early 60s. He's at an all-boys school. He's a teacher there, a high school teacher. He's the new teacher, and he's an English teacher and trying to gain a foothold with the boys and understand their lives a little bit. And at one point, he takes them into the school. They go down the hallway and they go to the trophy case, and they look in the trophy case and they look at a picture of one of the sports teams from 40, 50, 60, 70 years earlier. So a long time before that. And he says, he asks them to look at the faces of the boys, because the haircuts are a little different, but he says, look at their faces. And look at yourself, and you see that there's the sameness of those two things. You realize that even though these people are old or gone, they were young just like you are. And so what he's asking them to do is, and he uses the Latin phrase carpe diem, seize the day. And he was a bit of a humanist or a secular point of view, but as a Christian, it's the message is still the same: is that the day we have today is the day to be alive, and it's the day to do something with it. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And we will be connected with the day we have. We don't know about tomorrow. And the Lord says, don't worry about tomorrow. It has enough worry of its own. Concern yourself with the things of today. And so I think when we see that, when we see someone gone unexpected like that, we have to look and say, okay, I'm alive right now. God has allowed me to be here. What am I going to do with my life? And realize, I hope somewhere in there that your life isn't all about yourself, and what you're doing and what you want to accomplish. You're thinking in a bigger way in the purposes. But at that same moment, you also realize what our destiny is as a believer, that God is something far greater than all of this. And if we lose sight of that, we can get bogged down in all of the garbage and the junk of today, just in a moment's notice. You look at the top 10 list of Netflix, and most of those are depressing stories. Mm-hmm. And that's because they don't have a hope in something greater than themselves, something there in the future. So in any moment that we face difficulties and stuff, we can turn that around and say, okay, Lord, what's the bigger purpose? What's the bigger plan? Let me live today in the joyous knowledge that we're in relationship, which makes me think a little bit about the sermon. Well, I call it a message. Some people call it a sermon. I think sermon is, some people are fine with that phrase. Other people are a little off-put by sermon. They don't want to listen to a sermon, a talk, or whatever, a message. But we are continuing our storyteller series, and looking at the parables of Jesus, the stories. And again, the point to the parables is that those stories are connective. Anytime somebody says, hey, I got to tell you the story about what happened to me, a couple of years ago when I met so-and-so. And we all kind of listen a little closer. And so this particular parable was from Matthew 18, and it was it's titled normally The Wicked Servant. And the interesting thing about the chapter is I was going through it again, is that Jesus sometimes is talking to everybody, and other times he's just talking to his followers, those who are kind of in it with him, because he has a different message for them as a follower, as a believer, as a Christian. And so in this particular chapter, then, it starts out with the disciples asking him a question: who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Which is, how do you get to be number one in the kingdom of heaven? And so the rest of the chapter, in some ways, is Jesus responding to that. He's responding to that question, saying, you're not asking the right question. The kingdom of heaven isn't about you being number one. It's about an entirely different focus. And so we settled in on the parable itself, which I think we're going to get some good questions from as well. But again, in that story, just to highlight it real briefly, you have a servant or a master who was bringing his servants in to have an account. So they were trying to settle up with him. So the boss says, hey, come in here. You guys are responsible for your territories. You have your areas that you're in control of. I need to see how those things are, how that's working. I gave you a certain responsibility. How'd you do? And a guy comes back, and the servant himself owes an incredible debt to the king. Whatever he's done to get into that situation. And again, I need to tell you that Jesus is not telling this story because it's about people or it's a funny story about actual people. He's talking about the kingdom of God. And what he's really alluding to is the fact that we have this incredible debt we owe God, a debt that we can never pay. That's kind of the point of the story. And then the servant asks to be forgiven of it in some way or to have mercy upon him. And the master, the king, has mercy upon him and he forgives him the debt. And so that's a direct relationship story to our forgiveness that we receive through Jesus Christ. That's why this chapter is really about speaking to Christians, someone who understands that they've been forgiven. And then the point that he makes is that this servant himself then goes out after being forgiven, brings a guy that owes him a little bit of money, and he has no compassion or forgiveness or mercy for him. And the king, in this case, God, is not happy with a Christian or a person having an attitude like that. So that was kind of the context of the parable itself, and which hopefully, like I said, when we look at some of the questions, we got some good things that came out of it. Obviously, Tyler, that's probably, that's a fairly a parable that's not obscure. Most people, most Christians, most Christian teachers, or people that are part of it have heard it before. Do you ever recall that making any impact in your life? A story about forgiveness and being forgiving of others?
Yeah, absolutely. It's real easy to just just kind of think like, oh well, other people should forgive me, for the little things that I've done. But but then it's a lot harder to actually forgive someone yourself too when they've done something to hurt you, and that is just kind of the self-centered nature that we have as human beings, and part of our sin nature. And so and I've heard several messages on it over the years, and it is something that it's the kind of the impact of it is that like, look, okay, I have to remember that I have been forgiven, and my sins far outweigh anything that anyone has ever done to me. The things that I've done against God and rebellion against God, that's built up a debt that is far greater than anything that any one person has ever done to me. And so it's humbling for me to remember that. I was like, oh yeah, God, I mean, shoot, even just today, I've added to my sin debt, and so, so then to remember that when someone does offend me or does something to hurt me, or sin against me, that I also need to forgive them just as I've been forgiven. And just not as a not as a requirement for my salvation or to keep a relationship with God, but as an example of what God has done for us, to say, and for me to say, like, look, God has forgiven me, so I'm going to forgive you too. Much like the king or the master and the servant in this parable you taught on. It's pretty easy to look at that parable and say, yeah, that guy should have forgiven the guy that owed him money.
Right. Often we don't necessarily do that much ourselves. Although there is something in the tension of it, to say, God says, of not forgiving us, if we don't, that comes up in Matthew 6:15 also. And, and what it does if we don't do it, that there's some effect to it. So, there's a lot of more layers to it that you kind of dig into. And and have to wrestle through a little bit with how that works. We probably should take, if we could, some questions. Yep. I know we had some submissions for those. Yep. Do you have some video there, Mario, for us?
I do, yeah. And the first,
yes, I do.
First one
McKenna's? Do we have Bruce first?
Yeah, let's do McKenna's because that one will go well with what we're talking about here. So
okay,
here we go.
Hey guys, so I was just thinking that when you accept Jesus into your life, you are forgiven. He forgives you of all of your sins. So my question is, what do you tell someone when they ask why they have to go back to God and ask for forgiveness each time they sin?
Okay, McKenna, thank you for the question. We sure appreciate it. Just to kind of reiterate what you said, forgiveness of sins when we're saved. I mean, when we're saved, our sins are forgiven. So the slate is wiped clean, absolutely. And you really then follow that by saying, well, what do you say when someone asks, why do I have to go back to God each time I sin? If my sins were forgiven once, why is it that I need to go back to God every time after I sin? And I think that's a great question. You think, hey, I settled everything. We made the deal here. What's the point of me coming back? You've forgiven all my sins, so to speak. I had a thought on that, Tyler, because I was thinking about that question a little bit. The problem with that is it's not that our sins aren't forgiven. It's kind of like, okay, we made the deal. Like I bought the land from you. I bought the car. Whatever it is, we've made the deal. And if we look at it that way, that it's this single transaction that occurs, then we fail to understand the relationship component that exists between us and God. And it's kind of like a father and son has explained to me. I have a son, and no matter what he does, no matter where he goes, he'll always be my son. Whether he's in doing what I want or doing everything I don't want, he'd still be my son. But the issue of our relationship or closeness is directly affected and dependent in many ways upon what goes on within that relationship. And I think about sin as it comes up in our life. Think about it between someone you love. If there's a sin that occurs between a daughter and a father or mother, or a son and a father and mother who love each other normally, and that's their circumstance and life situation, if something troubling comes up in there and it's not addressed, it makes it difficult for that relationship to be secure. And so I think the issue, quite honestly, is that sin itself, sinning against someone, in this case, sinning against God, tends to put a break in that relationship. It puts a wall, a barrier between us. I know that myself. When I've got a sin where somewhere I've stumbled, if I don't do anything about that, I am not very likely to be talking to God. I feel bad about the relationship. It's bothering me. And until I come back and do something about it, I'm kind of in a stuck situation. I don't know, Tyler, if you've ever experienced that, with a sin in life creating a barrier between God until you dealt with it.
Yeah. And I think the analogy of, a father and son, or mother, daughter, or even husband and wife is a good one, because if I, if I snap in my anger at Tiffany, and then go back to her and go ask her for forgiveness afterwards, and she forgives me, but then I go and do it again, well, I can't say just because she forgave me the first time that things are okay and right in our relationship and our marriage after the second time too. And so, and so for just same thing with God. It is a relationship, but it's an ongoing relationship, and it's not so much about salvation after that initial surrendering your life to Christ and saying, God, I want to live for you and under your authority and kingship in my life and in my heart. After that, it's more about just maintaining a healthy relationship with God, and like kind of, I'm saying the same thing you've already said, but I'm
glad we agree. That's not a bad thing. We're in the same place about it.
Right.
That's cool. Yeah. Let's. We got another question, I think, from Alyssa. Let's run that one and see what Alyssa has to say to us.
Hey guys, my question is, how do you forgive things that are out of your control? For example, like the coronavirus, I know that I have, and other people I've talked to have anger and frustration towards it, but in a sense, we just need to forgive it. And so how do you go about forgiving things that are out of your control? Thank you guys.
Lisa, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll get to Tyler. I just want to restate again the question. So it was about how do you forgive things that are out of your control? And you made a specific reference to the coronavirus. Forgiveness there, dealing with it. So Tyler, if you want to start with that or jump at it, you can.
Yeah, and it just as I was thinking about your question, Alyssa, I think maybe at the heart of it is there are things that are out of our control that upset us or make us angry, and there's an element of I guess I would use the word acceptance rather than forgiveness, because it's, I mean, I don't know, maybe in a way, because like with the coronavirus in particular, there's not really anything or anyone to forgive. It's a virus. It's, so, but I think I understand the heart of your question, that like, what do we do when there's these things that are out of control that mess with our lives and make things difficult? And how do we kind of get past that anger or frustration or hurt that we end up feeling, right? And so, kind of going back to a little bit of what we were saying earlier is that there's an element of trust, that hey, there's this God that does see everything that happens. He is sovereign, and he does have control, so to speak. He allows bad things to happen, and we can get into that a little bit more perhaps later, but there is kind of this acceptance that like, okay, this is happening and it stinks, but how are you going to respond? Are you going to run to God, or are you going to turn away from him? And so as far as forgiving, these things that are out of our control, you kind of just have to come to terms with it, I think. And I don't know if there's a better way to put that, but just to say, all right, I'm going to accept this for what it is. It's reality. It's my situation. I can't do anything about it, but what can I do to make the best of it? And what can I do in the midst of this to honor and glorify God, through my actions, through my words, through the way I treat other people. And really in kind of taking that approach, I think you kind of come to a forgiveness or an acceptance of the situation.
Mark, I would definitely concur with you on that. I was thinking it was really about surrendering. So it's surrendering your ability to control things and giving those back to God. I think it's always that when we're faced with so many things. I mean, what do you really control in your life? I mean, in the end, we find we don't have control of much of anything. And that's difficult. I think that's a lifetime struggle to release control of those things, to surrender them back to God. So I just ask you, when you're faced against it, and I know particularly for you, you have to surrender your ability to control what's going to go on this spring and summer as you're going through, hopes of graduating, which you will, but I mean, of going through all the things that were part of it. You got to surrender and say, okay, Lord, I can't do anything about it. And I think just as we do that, as you release it, just kind of open up your hands, sort of, literally and figuratively, to God, say, I give it back to you. I can't do anything about it. I'm going to trust you in it. So that's all I'd ask you to do, is to just increase your level of trust. Just desire trust in the Lord more and more, and surrender to him, and just have confidence that he's going to work out things the best way for you. So good question. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it very much. We've got a question from Jenna.
Before we get to that, I think there's a couple of questions that came in via text that apply to this too.
Sure.
Yeah, and let's just take the first one here. And this one was from Victor, and it's why is God allowing COVID-19 or coronavirus to invade the world? And that's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, but maybe more specific to this pandemic that we're experiencing right now.
Sure. I like this phrasing there, invade. Coronavirus. On the loose, invading, coming to a theater near you. So, yeah, man, I appreciate that. Absolutely, Victor. That sense of, why does God allow certain things to happen? I think there's, on some level, there's natural processes that occur. It says in the Bible, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. God set up a world, and it's not that he's disappeared from the scene, but there are certain things that have been set in motion, not the least of which are the results of our rebellion and sin in the world. Back all the way to Adam and Eve in the garden, we rebelled from God and we took a different path. And because of that, it's interesting to note, if you read in Romans 8:22 that all of creation is groaning and laboring for a new world to be made. And so the creation itself, animals, trees, rocks, mountains, the world itself labors and groans for the Lord to remake things. So unfortunately, we sit in a time where bad things happen. And sometimes bad things happen to good people. They honestly do, because of what's been set in motion. And God has a plan, and he's going to work it the way he sees fit. But there is a sense of saying, you know what? There are some things going on that are the result all the way back of our rebellion. And we sit under them. And we can shake our fist at God. And a lot of times people don't even acknowledge God. They do whatever they want. They live any way they want to all day long. And then something goes wrong. And then they want to turn and say, hey, what's going on? And so it's a good question in that sense. But I think we are going to be victims to tragedy. I mean, the good man that accidentally died yesterday that we know, I mean, his family's going to have to suffer under that because of all of sin's effects. One of them is death, and people die, and that is hard news. And we got to be there for people. We got to support them, but it doesn't make it any easier, Right. So, Tyler?
Yeah, and that actually leads perfectly into the next question that comes from Judah, which is how come God lets people die suddenly and without warning? And that was one I gave a little bit of thought to myself of, obviously we know we all die, right, at some point. That's an inevitability of life. Right, yeah. But when it's sudden and unexpected, that's when, maybe it's a little bit more difficult in some ways. Yeah, because if you're 95 and, your body's starting to shut down, that's a little bit easier to take in some ways than a sudden thing. And, and I, just as I've thought about that, I do think kind of the approaching it from a different angle of just saying, well, if we did know when we would die, how would that affect our lives today? And what
would we do different? Yeah.
If I knew that I had another 50 years to live, I probably wouldn't give a rip what I did today. I'd start eating cookies and cake and pie all day, every day, and go do whatever the heck I want. Cause hey, I'm good. I've got another 50 years.
I can't go. Yeah.
Right. So I can get back in shape later. I can, do whatever I want, to get right later, and that's, maybe that's part of why God doesn't let us know when we're going to die, is because he wants us to understand that the moment we're living right now is the most important moment. And we need, like, he wants us to do right in this moment and not be thinking like, oh, I've got time later to do that. Or, I can do what I want now, and I'll do what you want later, God. And so when it comes to death and sudden deaths, that it's difficult. There's no two ways around it. And yeah, the loss that family has around that and the pain that comes with it is hard. But I think it'd be pretty catastrophic if we all knew when we were going to die.
Yeah, it's interesting as you were even saying that, it made me think of the study or look at those who have been in war. They approach it two different ways. In World War II, they had the ticket that they had when they were in service was sort of open-ended, and the soldiers didn't necessarily know when they were going to get out of there. Now in Vietnam, it was different. They actually had a countdown all the time, and it actually affected morale in a very interesting way. When the soldiers were unaware of when they would go, they had to just learn to live with the situation because they didn't have any idea when it would ever end. And they had to make peace with where they were at and do the best job they could because they had no idea when it was going to end. In Vietnam, when they knew the exact date, then everybody began to live very differently. If it got anywhere close to that date, you wouldn't go out. They wouldn't participate in missions. They were always living trying to just be careful because they said, well, I got to get to the state because I know when I'm going. So I'm not going to engage in anything that I don't absolutely been forced to do. And so it's a very interesting study that, if we knew that, we would live very differently. And we can say, hey, it's 50 years from now, but that impending date would hang over our heads all our lives. And so we live, we know that it is an outcome, but God doesn't put it there. So I think that for that reason alone, that's just why suddenness always affects us in such a strange way. This fine man did not know that this was the number of days, but all of us have to know that one day will be the day that we're done. And so we got to make a decision to go, okay, I know it's coming. So am I going to deal with my life in response to that? And then, joyfully live in the days that I have. So it's a good question and I appreciate it. And there isn't an easy answer for that one. Yeah. Except on our part, we got to care and love those people when they suffer those losses.
Absolutely. Yeah. And live like today may be your last, not in the sense of like go out and party and live it up, but in the sense of just right. In the sense of like, do what's right for today, and honor God with your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So
yeah, you got to live
with that. Why don't?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say that it's, it fits another parable that, if you thought the master was coming back someday, you would live in the appropriate way. You'd take care of stuff. If you didn't think he was ever coming back, then you just do whatever. And Jesus tells a lot of parables like that. He says, I'm coming back and I'm the boss. And I want you to live like I'm coming back and like it matters. And that's the thing that you got to carry out of it. There will be a day of reckoning. There will be a day of accounting for our lives. And so we need to live that way. We need to tell people that, hey, it matters how you live. You're going to have to give an accounting for it someday. So anyways, we want to move on to a different question, one of our written ones or one of the video ones?
Let's go ahead and roll Jenna's question here.
Okay.
That one.
Hey guys, so Mark, I know you had said in your message that when someone refuses to forgive, it is the most punishment for themselves because it leads to a broken relationship with God. But my question was, what if you're ever in a situation where someone else is refusing to forgive you, and as a byproduct of that, it's also affecting you? How can you deal with that, and what can you do in that situation? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate your question. Just thoughtful. It's in reflection, honestly, of the message. And so I appreciate you having listened to it and then come up with it. And it was really, your question really is, we're supposed to forgive others, but what if when we try people, okay, when they won't forgive you, it was your question is like, if they won't actually forgive you, like you asked to be forgiven, but you're like, hey, I wronged you. I want to be forgiven. I'm sorry. Can we make this up? And they don't want to do it. What do you do with that? And that's a good question because there are people out there that don't want to let go of a hurt. You're absolutely right. You probably run into them and it's not fun. That's not a pleasant circumstance. Tyler, did you have anything off the top that came to you with, trying to deal with people that won't actually forgive you when you want to make it right?
Yeah. It's hard because especially if you're someone that cares about what other people think, which we all are on some level.
Some degree, absolutely. Some, yeah, definitely.
Right. It can really affect you, and especially if it's a friendship or some close relationship that you've had that has gone sour because of something that you did, and you want to make it up, and you want to apologize, and they're not willing to go there again, and don't want to forgive you and don't want to be friends anymore. That's a really difficult thing. And so, it makes me think of what Paul says, where, and I forget the exact reference in the Bible, but where he says, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with one another, and that's kind of another instance where we just kind of have to accept what it is. We say, look, I've done what I can. I reached out to the person. I apologized. I, admitted what I did was wrong. And I've done all these things, and I've done everything that I possibly could to make peace with that person. Mm-hmm. And, at that point, if they're still not willing to forgive, well, then it's not on you anymore. It's right. On them. And ultimately you've done what you could, and that's kind of where you have to leave it. You just hope and pray that at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, but sometimes it may not be for years, that they come back and say, you know what, thanks for apologizing, and let's at least be on good terms with one another, right. But it's a very difficult thing, and I've been in situations like that myself, and you want people to forgive you. You want the relationship to be restored. And maybe if I just, another thought popped in my head and I'll keep going here, but that there is a difference between, there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, right? Where forgiveness is something that God asks of us, right? And requires us. And he does ask that we seek reconciliation too, but forgiveness is only one step in the process of reconciliation, where you forgive someone for their wrong, or they forgive you, but then the relationship may not go back to the way it was for a long time, or ever. The relationship may be changed forever depending on what happened. And so reconciliation then is taking it to that next step of kind of repairing the relationship and trying to have some sort of semblance of what it was. But and that's where God wants us to forgive, and hopefully others forgive us. But sometimes full reconciliation just isn't possible. That's not going to happen. And so
good answer. I won't add to that. I appreciate it, and thank you very much, Jenna, for it. So do we have another? I think we've got another question from Kaylin. Do we have that one? I'd like to hear what she has to say. She's a pretty thoughtful young person. So,
hi, Tyler. My question is, do you think that the principles you talked about in your sermon could be applied to forgiving ourselves? And if so, what principles and how? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kaylin. That's a deep question. So good for you. You must be related to a pastor or something. I don't know, but thank you for it. The idea just was, the principles or the things we're talking about with regards to forgiveness. Can that be applied to forgiving ourselves? In what ways? How do we deal with that? And it's interesting. I think on some level, forgiving ourselves is like forgiving others. There is a wrong, and then we have to decide to forgive the wrong. Because we're looking at, okay, if I've sinned against others, I can work that out. But sinning against, God and then forgiving ourselves for it, it's difficult, because I think to some degree, people and perhaps many people, I don't know if it's a majority of people, struggle with some guilt over the things they've done wrong. And I think that there's a sense that we have to pay out a certain punishment to ourselves. I think we apply it in life. If you've done something wrong, you need to be punished. You need to work it out. And so in some ways, I think the difficulty in forgiving ourselves is feeling like we have to punish ourselves into some regard. And I think that happens a lot with our relationship with the Lord. It's like, if it's been a troubled sin, something we've done before, we just feel like, I've been in this spot before. And I speak from my own experience of, a reoccurrence of a sin. Everybody has, not everybody, but to most degree, some of us have some things we struggle with. And as much as we'd like it to go away always, it seems to come back. And it can be a number of different areas. And so you can just fill in the blank for yourself. What's the thing that you keep coming back to? Whether it's anger or gossip or lust or jealousy or whatever it is, there's this area that we seem to come back to. And when we do it again, we have a tendency to look at ourselves and just go, I'm sick of myself. I'm tired of me being like this. How could God ever want to deal with me anymore? And that really comes back to, it's like sometimes when we were a small child, we did something wrong, we broke something, made a mess. We want to hide it. We tend to want to cover it up so that our parents don't find out in some way. We want to keep it from them because we're afraid of what will happen. We're afraid if we come back. And I think what I've got to understand, and you've got to understand, and everybody out there's got to understand, is that God already knows. And the issue is that we can bring anything to him and nothing will shock him. His greatest desire is to be in relationship with us. I mean, I don't know what I should say. Let me properly phrase that. I don't know what God's greatest desire is. I know a great desire towards people is that he's in relationship with us. He's God and everything, so I'm not going to speak for what his greatest desire is. But a great desire of God is to be in relationship with us. And that's evidenced by what he did to do it, to create relationship again. He sacrificed Jesus Christ on a cross, taking all of our sin. He did that to establish relationship with us. So I'm going to tell you, it's really important. It's really a big deal to God that we're in relationship. So the number one thing is that he already knows what we did. And what he's asking for us to do is to bring ourselves to him bare and open. and just say, Lord, I know I've done it over and over again. Okay. But I'm coming back to you because I know that you love me. And when you're firmly convinced that God loves you, it doesn't matter anymore what you've done. Now we want to change and we want to grow, and we've got to put things in place to eliminate some of that stuff. We need to not keep doing the same things. I mean, we're admonished. We're told by Paul many times, you lived a life one way in the past. God doesn't want you, and I don't want you living that same life again. So set some things in place that can help you not to do that again. But you need to understand something. God will never reject the open heart that comes to him. And so bottom line, no matter what that thing is, no matter how many times you've done it, if you are sincere, God waits. We told the story of the prodigal son to tell you something, that God waits expectantly for us to return. If we come to our senses and take one turn towards God, he does all the rest. So I just want you to know that, Kaylin, anybody out there, God is ready to take you back every single time you've made a mistake when you're sincere in your heart towards him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good, Mark, and appreciate it. And I know for me, just something that has been just kind of a practical step that that I do when I'm repeating sins. I often have to claim the truth over myself that God's mercies are new every morning. As surely as the sun rises in the morning, God is the merciful and gracious God. And to help myself remember that those sins aren't things that I should be doing. I just try to claim the truth that, this is not what God wants for me. He has forgiven me. He loves me. And these are the things that he does want for me, and this is the new life that I've been born into again, and so just kind of having some Bible verses, memorized and kind of tucked in the back of your head for those moments is really helpful. It has been for me, at least, to remember.
Yeah, just remember. Yeah, and remember that in the story, the parable, how many times were we supposed to forgive those who wronged us? 7 times 70. I mean, we weren't supposed to keep track. So however you want to take that, we have to forgive ourselves. I mean, you are called to release that, to not let that hold, because don't let pride and shame and the devil's work keep you from coming back to God. Don't let your pride get in the way, in that regard. And just remember that we're called to do it. So, just take a hold of that. And then again, if it's a reoccurring issue, bring that in context to a relationship with somebody else, another person that you can trust and love in your life, to say, hey, I'm having trouble with the thing, if that's what it is, and let them hold you accountable and be part of that process so that you can grow and you don't have to be in that same place in the future. So it's a great question. Definitely.
It is, yeah. Thank you, guys. And thank you for all of your questions. Mario, I didn't see any in the comments. Did you? Things. Okay. I do know we had one more that was texted in from Connie.
Right.
And that I think we've kind of hit on some of it already, but it'll be good to kind of wrap it in a nice little bow.
She said something like, sometimes when things don't go as expected in life, why do some Christians turn away from God rather than turning towards him? When tough things come into life as a believer, or whatever it is, or circumstances, and you turn away from God. And I suppose sometimes it's just hard to trust, and I'm sorry when people in our lives who are Christians seem to turn away. They can be family members that have started to walk away. And those are the times of trust when we've got to turn to God more and more and say, okay, Lord, you're the only one that can do something about this. I can't make anybody do anything. And so I'm just going to pour it out to you again and again and say, Lord, would you show that person where they need to be, and continue to love them and continue to reach out. But that's a tough one. I don't know if, Tyler, you have a quick dollar answer for that one.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll try to keep it quick. But
we already give me your 75-cent answer then, if you don't have a buck answer.
So. I'll just cut it off at a certain time, and if it makes sense or not, whatever. No.
All right. We'll hold you to that.
But it does, I mean, there are obviously, when hard things come up or things don't go as planned, there's the two options of, do we turn to God or away from him? And I do think, a lot of times when people walk away from God or turn away from God or get angry at God, blame him, whatever it is, there is, like you said, Mark, there's a trust issue there. But often that lack of trust exists because they've allowed other things to creep into their thinking, other non-truths, lies and things, that's, and I think of what we've talked about in person before of some of the deconstruction of faith stories that people have put out there, Rhett and Link and other popular Christians that have come out and said, yeah, I'm no longer a Christian, and here's why. And it's those kinds of things that just kind of creep in over time that you allow into your thinking, you allow into your head to say, yeah, God really doesn't have my best interest in mind. God really doesn't love me, or whatever, whatever that looks like in particular for each person's struggle there. It's, but those are the things that often lead to people walking away from God, to let those non-truths enter their thinking and to actually believe them, and so it's heartbreaking, and you hope it doesn't happen to you, and hope it doesn't happen to those you love, but the reality is that it does, and
it does sometimes. These things do. So, but that's okay. I mean, in the sense that we have stories and things from Jesus of saying there's people that have come to that spot, but God's got a bigger plan. And God's quite capable of turning a ship around, no matter where the direction is. And so, number one, like in anything, bring it to God, and work on your own trust that God can handle any circumstance, that he can work out any person's situation and bring them back, that he's the one capable of doing that and bringing those things to him and just trusting him through all those things. So appreciate the question, appreciate all those questions. We appreciate everybody that's been with us today. Thank you, Mario, again, for all your help on the technical side of making things work. Couldn't do it without you. Tyler, I appreciate you and working together with you on this. And hopefully we'll get some more of our grown adults participating in some of these things as well, so their faith can be built up during this season of quarantine that will not last forever, I think.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyways, Tyler, do you got any finishing words, and then send us away, I suppose?
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate it, and I enjoy this. This is fun, and thank you for your part in it as well. And if you guys want to connect with us off air here, then go ahead and hop on over to Instagram. We've got an Instagram set up for middle school students. That's The Rock MLAC, or for high school students, it's Dunamis MLAC, DUNAMIS MLAC. And then we're also on Facebook with the same monikers there. And and so connect with us, leave some comments in the comment section here, and even if you're watching this after the fact, go ahead and do that, and we'll do our best to get back to you if you have any questions or anything. We'd love to connect, and be looking for our next video message coming out next week. We're going to be starting on our Easter series. And so
Easter's coming up. Absolutely. We'll post those on our YouTube channel. So those will be up there. You can watch them. Appreciate all the watch and comments and the likes, and just keep doing that. We'll continue to do it. So we love you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you soon.
Love you.